Welcome back to the History of the Papacy podcast, a podcast about the popes of Rome and Christian Church. Prepare yourself to step behind the ropes and leave the official tour of the story of the popes and Christianity. I am your host, Steve Guerra, and I thank you for joining me on this journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to the History of the Papacy podcast. I am very excited to be joined today by author Aldo Cazzullo, who has written a book called The Never-Ending Empire, The Infinite Impact of Ancient Rome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Aldo.
Thank you so much.
Let's just get right into it. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe get into a little bit of the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic space and genre? It has just a seemingly endless font of books, movies, papers. Why Rome?
That's a good question. I am 59. I'm a journalist. I am a writer. I wrote 30 books about Italian history and identity. I sold 2 million copies of those books. Surely everything begins with Rome. Italy is a very recent, modern state. Italy wasn't born from politics or diplomacy or war. Italy was born from culture, from art, from literature, and everything begins with Rome. And I think there is a very deep link between Rome and America. As you told, Rome inspired novels, comics, films, TV series. When I was young, I remember my parents watched Ben-Hur, The Robe, Quo Vadis, Barabbas. I read when I was young Asterix and then Gladiator. But it's not all a fact of art. It's also a fact of culture, symbols, strategies, ideas. In my opinion, America is the new Rome. Every empire in history portrayed itself as the heir of the Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire, Constantinople. The Holy Roman Empire, Charlemagne. Tsar and Kaiser are words that derive from Caesar, so the Russian Empire, the German Empire. Napoleon adored Caesar. He wrote a book about him, and he wanted to be crowned not king, rather than emperor of the French. We had the British Empire, but the real heir of the Roman Empire is the United States of America. America has not 300 years behind it. America has 3,000 years behind it, just like China. Because what was the symbol of the Roman legions? The eagle. What the USA's symbol? The eagle. What the USA's motto? It's a Latin motto. E pluribus unum. Out of many states, one. English is the new Latin, the language of the world. I am in Washington, D.C. Everything here reminds me of Rome, the Senate. Capitol Hill is named after Roman Capitolium, one of the 7 legendary hills upon which Rome was born. Jefferson Memorial is a copy of the Pantheon. White House, also the White House, is a Roman-style building. The words of power, the language of politics derives from Latin, liberty, citizen, people, society, treaty, candidate, elected, president, socialism, communism, liberalism, nationalism are Latin words, and the most important is republic, res publica, public thing. The idea that the state belongs to everyone was born in Rome, and the founder's father of the USA looked to the Roman Republic. For example, Madison, Hamilton signed their articles with the name Publius. Publius was one of the first consuls. And when in 1777 George Washington rejected the peace offers of the British generals, he proclaimed, "The united armies of America are fighting for the noblest of causes, freedom." The same principles inspired the arms of ancient Rome in the days of its glory.
Now, your book is written in a really different style, which I find really interesting, and it also covers a lot of it covers the same material, but in a very different way. And one thing that I found, and it took me a little time to process this, but the entire book is written in the simple present tense. Was that purposeful? Or I'd love to hear where that, all of that came from.
You're right. I read many books, obviously, many ancient books, Roman books, the poets, Virgil, Horace, Ovid, and I read also books written by our contemporaries. For example, Mary Beard, SPQR, what a great book. I use the present tense because many facts are so known that I think I can see them. I can see, for example, when Caesar receives the Pompey's head on a silver plate, he bursts into tears, and I can see him. Caesar says, "You deprive me of the only possible victory in a civil war, to forgive the defeated, to give salvation to the enemies." But Caesar doesn't say that if Ptolemy had not cut off that head, he would have done himself the same. So for me, it's present, it's not past. I can see it and I recognize myself, my story, Italian story and American story. Because to end the speech about the Roman Empire and the American Empire, they had the same strategy, turning the defeated enemies into allies. What America did with Germany, Italy, and Japan after World War II. Forging different pacts, different agreements with different peoples, and valuing, this is very modern, cultural, economical, military influence over occupation of territories. Real power for ancient Romans and for Americans, the real power is not over land, it's over minds and souls. I think Americans are impatient, are restless, are optimistic, and I think they resemble to ancient Romans.
Hey, Steve here. If you're enjoying the History of the Papacy podcast, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/History of the Papacy. We're working toward going completely listener funded, which means no more ads ever. When you join, you get early access to episodes, monthly book giveaways, and most importantly, your name is added to the History of the Papacy Diptychs, our own list of commemorated supporters. You can become an Antioch level supporter for just $3 per month. But it makes a huge difference to making the History of the Papacy ad-free and independent. Nobody likes ads, not you, not me, and I'm the guy who records them. So let's just get rid of them. Visit patreon.com/History of the Papacy and join today. A topic that you really delved into in the beginning of the book, and I think it's fascinating and it really ties into the themes that I wanted to discuss in my entire podcast, is the relationship between history, myth, and legend. And what I found interesting, and especially the way you laid it out in this book, is that Rome has multiple origin stories. Aeneas, the Trojan, Romulus and Remus, a really local story, the line of the seven kings. And oftentimes these stories contradict each other and they're inconsistent, but the Romans did a wonderful job of syncretizing all these stories. From your research, did the Romans really care that there was inconsistencies in these stories when they were building their mythology of how they became a people?
For the Romans, that stories were holy stories, myths, And some of them really believe to be the descendants, but they didn't know exactly who were their ancestors, which is very interesting. You know, that the Roman story was terrific. It begins with a kill. Romulus, a brother who kills his own brother. And the story goes on with a rape. Lucrece was raped by the king's son, and the people revolted against the kings, and the Roman Republic was born. But when Rome became the master of the known world, the Romans needed a more glorious story, where they can find it in Greece, in the Greek poems. Grecia capta ferum victorem cepit, wrote Horace. In being conquered, Greece conquered her ferocious conqueror. Some claimed we are descendants of Ulysses, the smartest. Some claimed we are the descendants of Achilles, the strongest. Virgil, the great poet, said no, we are the descendants of Aeneas, the pious, the merciful, the compassionate. Aeneas is not a conqueror. Aeneas is not a winner. He's a defeated hero. He's not the master of his fate. He does not what he wants. He would like to fight for Troy. He has to flee. He would like to stay with his wife, but he has to abandon her. He falls in love with Dido. He has to abandon also Dido because he has to marry an Italian princess to create Rome. Aeneas is the merciful hero who flees from Troy, holding his son Iulus, the ancestor of Julius Caesar, by the hand and carrying his father Anchises. Aeneas is the pious hero who cares for the elders and for the descendants, who take charge of the past and of the future, who looks ahead and behind it. Pietas doesn't mean also mercy. It means responsibility, moral strength, devotion to the family, to the people, and to the gods. And the pietas is the Roman feeling in which the Christians recognize themselves. This is the reason why Dante chose Virgil as a guide in his trip in the afterlife, hell, purgatory, paradise. And you know that Virgil wrote that a young boy will be born to save mankind. And the Christians thought that Virgil had predicted the birth of Jesus. In fact, Jesus was born at the Augustus age, in a Virgil age. And you know how many films were inspired by the story of Jesus at the Roman age. Jesus Christ Superstar, the Passion of Christ from Mel Gibson, but many films in all the periods of cinema's story.
One thing that I find really fascinating, especially the way you've laid it out, is that Rome has this beginning story, foundational story that they build on. But then you go to the Byzantines in Constantinople, where Constantine takes those myths and that foundation story and puts a Christian layer on it. Then Moscow, when they need a foundation story, they build on top of the Constantinople, which was built on the Rome. And then the United States builds onto the foundation story. Why do you think that this Roman foundation story is so enduring in the West?
Because I think the West is a building built on the foundations of ancient Rome. Also, about religion, faith, pontiff are Latin words. Now we have, for the first time in history, an American pontiff. If Christianity is the religion of the West, if many of us believe in Jesus, if the new Pope has been elected in Rome and is an American, if because the American Empire, the Roman Empire became Christian, very important, one could become a Roman, whatever one's origin, skin color, or religion. Also, the gods could become Roman. But every god had his motherland. Isis from Egypt, Mithra from Persia, Yahweh from Judea. The Christian God was a universal God. Christians refused to adore the emperor or other gods. And the Roman emperors persecuted Christians also because they didn't understand them. Christianity appeared to the Romans to have turned their world upside down. Poverty, that for the Romans was a disgrace, became for the Christians a virtue. The body, instead of being massaged, perfumed, made up, trained, exhibited, delighted with any kind of pleasures, terms, bath, sex, wine, food, the body became something negative. The matter is not important for the Christians. The soul, the spirit is important. And the cross, that was the symbol of the most atrocious, humiliating, public, painful death, became the symbol of salvation. And then Emperor Constantine had an idea that a strange religion that no one could erase, he could embrace it. One God in heaven, one emperor on earth. It's true that Christianity promises a revolution. The first ones will be the last ones, but not in this life, in afterlife, in the next life. And to end, I think that there is a deep link between the Roman history and also the history of the Church. You know that the Pope had a false document, the Constantine's donation, and the Pope said it was Constantine who gave me Rome, who gave me the power. Constantine founded Constantinople. Constantinople was a prodigy of history, was a miracle. Constantinople resisted the barbarians. Constantinople resisted the Arabs. Constantinople resisted the Turks until 1453. And the nephew of the last emperor married the first Tsar, Ivan the Great. Tsar is a word that derives from Caesar. And also the Russians think to have manifest destiny to protect Christianity, to protect a civilization. The third Rome, first Rome is Rome, the second is Constantinople, the third is Moscow. But as you know, manifest destiny was created by an American journalist, O'Sullivan, in 1845. What was the manifest destiny? To rule the world. When John Booth killed Lincoln, chose as a code name for his kill the Ides of March, the same name that the killers of Caesar, Brutus and Cassius used. He was wrong. Lincoln was not a tyrant. Lincoln was a great president. But maybe at that age, people didn't look to the Roman Republic, but to the Roman Empire. When in June 1963, John Kennedy spoke in Berlin, he told, 2 millennia ago, the greatest pride was to be able to say, Civis Romanus sum, I am a Roman citizen. Now, in the free world, the greatest pride is to say, Ich bin ein Berliner. I am a Berlin citizen. So in Berlin, the key phrase of the Cold War was carved out of a Roman motto. But at the end, my favorite speech from an American president was a speech delivered from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 5 June 1944, the day before American troops entered Rome, the day after they landed in Normandy. It was the turning point of the Second World War. And Roosevelt said, Italians are not our enemy. Fascism was our enemy. Italy is Dante. Italy is Michelangelo. Italy is Marconi. Italy is Christopher Columbus. Italy is Galileo. And Rome was not only a military target. Rome was the Republic. Rome was the empire. Rome was indeed the Catholic Church. As an Italian, when I listen to this Roosevelt's speech, I am moved.
I'd like to just set aside the popes for a minute. We can get into them towards the end. But the one section of the book that I really enjoyed, because I didn't know as much, I just knew maybe the surface level story, was about the Gracchi brothers, the reformers or radicals. And in history, even in American politics, certain politicians have been compared to the Gracchi brothers, or been called tyrants or been called reformers. What I wonder is how should we understand the Gracchi brothers, especially as they start to set up what happens when Julius Caesar and Augustus come? And then maybe we can talk about how maybe we should connect to them today.
Yes, the Gracchi tried to help people. The Gracchi, Tiberius Gracchus and his brother, was a tribune of the plebs. They passed the agrarian reform to limit the large landed estates and redistribute land to poor peasants. But their enemies, the optimates, the aristocrats, the rich, the senator, murdered them in a terrific way. They paid the engagement with their life. And Caesar was their heir, because Caesar was an aristocrat, but he was the leader of populares. We could say also today the left. Caesar supported the frumentatio, the free distribution of wealth. When Caesar was 32, he got his first political charge, procurator in Spain. He went to Gibraltar, to Cadiz, at the end of the war, where Hercules had erected the columns to say this is the age, the end of the war. And there was also a great statue of Alexander the Great. Caesar, in that fatal place, had an emotional breakdown and burst into tears. And their companion asked him, "Why are you crying, Caesar?" And he answered, "Because at my age, Alexander the Great had conquered the whole world, and me, I haven't yet done anything glorious." And his companion said, "You're crazy, Caesar. Rome is not a kingdom. Rome is not an empire. Rome is a republic. And we are losing. The power is in the hands of our enemies. Cato, Sylla, Pompey, Cicero, the aristocrats, the optimates, the enemies of the people." But Caesar wanted to make an alliance between the leader and the people. You know that when Caesar was killed, 23 wounds, their killers made two political mistakes. Some said, "We have to kill also Antony, the Caesar's legion leader." But Brutus said, "No. It's a tyrannicide, only the tyrant, only Caesar has to die." Second political mistake, some said, "Let's get his corpse and throw it into the river, into Tiber." But Brutus said, "No, it was a great military commander. He deserves a great funeral." But at the funeral, Antony read the will, the testament of Caesar. Caesar left 300 sesterces each, thousands of dollars, to every Roman citizen, and the people cried, and the people revolted against Brutus and Cassius, who had killed Caesar, because you know that at every funeral, everyone mourns their own death. But that time, even more so, because Caesar appeared the father of the people. So the people chose Antony and Augustus. Brutus and Cassius had to flee. Brutus had a vision, a shadow, who said, "I am your evil genius. I will see you in Philippi." And the day before the last battle, Brutus asked, "Where are we now? What's the name of this place?" And some answered him, "We are in Philippi." And so Brutus understand he was going to a bad end.
For modern politicians, and really I only understand this more through the context of U.S. politics, but do other countries try to hitch their wheel to this populism movement in a good way? Because would you say the Gracchi brothers were good populists?
Surely they were very good populists because they didn't come from the people, but they fought for the people and they died for the people. There are two black holes in Roman history: women and slaves. Slavery was a shame. But you know that not only every emperor in history presented himself as the new Caesar, also every revolutionary in history presented himself as the new Spartacus. You love the cinema. Do you remember Spartacus by Stanley Kubrick, when at the end Crassus defeated the slaves, but he has a problem. He doesn't know who Spartacus is, and he promises salvation to everyone if Spartacus will relieve himself. And Kirk Douglas is standing to say, I'm Spartacus, but his companion said, no, me, I am Spartacus. No, if me, Spartacus. No, and so Crassus decides to crucify all of them. 40,000 crucified. It was terrible. But when, after World War I, the German communists tried to make the revolution, they called themselves Spartacides. Also, Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht went to a bad end. But it's amazing that in Berlin in 1918, there were women and men ready to fight and die in the name of a mysterious slave who had done the same 2 millennia earlier. Women were excluded by the politics. Obviously, we cannot accept that. Democracy is a Greek word, but the first real democracy was Rome. It was the people, not the Senate, that made the laws. It was the people, not the Senate, that declared the war. It was the people, not the Senate, that elected the consuls. Women were excluded. But in ancient Rome, women enjoyed greater freedom than in any other ancient civilization. Women were not relegated to the home. Women could dine with men, frequent arenas and baths. Above all, women were able to own, sell, and buy things. They could be independent. They could make business. All rights that were granted in Italy to our grandmothers only a century ago. And when Augustus was very jealous of his only daughter, Julia. Julia had a love affair with Ovid, the poet. Augustus exiliated Ovid to the Black Sea. Ovid wrote, "My eyes were guilty. I saw something that I couldn't see. Maybe an erotic jest between a father and daughter." Surely, Augustus passed an odious measure, the honor killing. The man who found his wife or his sister or his daughter with another man could kill her going unpunished. It was a shame. And the Roman women occupied the forum to protest against that odious measure. It was the first feminist occupation in history.
One thing that I really struggle with when I think about Roman history is we seem to repeat it so often in the West. And I don't know if that's just a narrative that we create because we are so steeped in Roman history, or is it that we are so steeped in Rome that these same themes that happened in Rome seem to happen over and over again in Western history?
Surely we have now to face the same issues that the Romans had to face immigration, and they faced the immigration by integration. One could become a Roman, whatever one's origin, skin color, religion. Romans were not racist. Romans were not discriminatory, save towards the Goths, who were mocked because they were considered too tall and too blonde. And we talk about Aeneas. No, Aeneas was a refugee, was a migrant. So openness is one of the secrets of the strength of ancient Rome. If true that Augustus, they said there are too many migrants here in Rome. Some of them has to come back home. Why? Who? So the migrants who have a work can stay. The migrants that don't have a work have to flee, to leave. The storytellers, what can we do about the storytellers? I don't know. They have to go. I don't know. The journalists, I'm afraid that also the journalists had to go. And the other issue that we have to face and that the Romans had to face is the permanent state of war. Why? Did Rome always win the wars? Because the Roman soldier didn't fight only for himself, his tribe, his clan, his family, just barbarians did. The Roman soldier fought for something more, for the Republic, for the Empire, for Rome. And the Roman legionary was not a warrior, a hero. He was a military professional. His goal was not a glorious death. His goal was a peaceful retirement, thanks to the god and to the land taken away by the enemy. And the Roman general was not a hero, a heroic figure, a soldier, why we not die. He was an engineer. He was a strategist. He was a planner who knew that Rome could lose a battle, and Rome lost many battles, but at the end, Rome would win the war.
Steve here with a quick word from our sponsors. One, it was sort of a little bit of a side story in the Gracchi brothers chapter, but there was you made just a quick reference to Governor Gray Davis from California, and that was way back in 2003, and it was sort of it was a blast from the past. And I remember from back then that Davis was, as I recall it, sort of just a ineffectual, bad administrator who one thing led to, some of the things were his fault, some of them weren't, and one thing led to another, but he was ousted in a recall vote, which was very rare. And it hasn't happened since in California, and in many places, it's in the United States in particular, there's no mechanism for recall. How did you think that this story of Gray Davis fit in with this the chapter on the Gracchi brothers? It's such an interesting comparison.
Yes, the idea that a magistrate could be removed if he did not serve in the interest of the people or simply no longer enjoyed their trust came from Tiberius Gracchus. And for this reason, he had the assembly vote to remove a tribune of the plebs who opposed his land reform, because he was a traitor. He served not the people, but the aristocrats. And the same thing happened more than 29 centuries later, in 2003, to Gray Davis, as you told, the governor of California. You remember, who was deposed by popular vote. The Austrian-born former actor Arnold Schwarzenegger, famous for playing the title role in Conan the Barbarian, was elected after him. But there are many links between American history and Roman history. For example, after a victory against Great Britain, the companions of Washington retired and created the Society of Cincinnatus, in memory of Cincinnatus, who was a great military leader. But when he won the war, he renounced to the power and he retired in his small farm, ready to come back if the Republic will need him. And for example, I know Joseph Warren, another of the founder's father, spoke with a toga. But also, there are also pictures of Franklin Delano Roosevelt dressed as an ancient Roman with a toga. Surely, Roman civilization inspired the American civilization. And I know how you love the movies, the films. Do you remember Gladiator? In Italy, everybody knows how Gladiator begins. At my signal, unleash hell. because we love soccer, and many soccer players to encourage their companions say, "At my signal, unleash hell." Few remember how Gladiator ends. Before dying, Gladiator said, "There was once a dream. It was Rome. It shall be realized." What was Rome's dream? The government of the world, the universal peace, a community as large as the known world at peace, not because it was weak and divided, but because it was strong and united, a multicultural, a multi-ethnic, a multi-religious world. And I think that the reason why the digital emperors look to the Roman emperors, for example, that Bill Gates is a fan of ancient Rome. Elon Musk proclaimed himself emperor of Mars. He wanted to have a physical fight with Mark Zuckerberg in Colosseum. He proclaimed America as the new Rome. Mark Zuckerberg is a fan of Augustus. His wife Priscilla wrote, "We spent our honeymoon in Rome. I thought we'd be three, me, Mark, and Augustus, because Mark wanted to be photographed with all the statues of Augustus he met." And there are many, many, many statues of Augustus in Rome, because Augustus was the first name whose face was known by all of his contemporaries. 2,500 statues with the face of Augustus, one in each city of the empire. Mark Zuckerberg has his hair cut like Augustus. He ended his meeting with the cry "Dominium" in Latin. He called his daughters August, Maxima, and Aurelia. Why? Because I think digital emperors look to the Roman emperors because they were the first who ruled immense communities composed by people who would never meet physically, but were born and lived and died after one Caesar. Seriously, America, in my opinion, is not declining. When I was young, technology was Japanese. Now technology is American. Who did the internet? America. Who did the digital revolution? America. Who's doing the AI revolution? America. If there is a book, a novel, a film, a cultural fad, a scientific discovery, a technological innovation, it comes from the USA. The rest of the world, China included, or copies or buys. Please, American, don't lose your openness. It's the secret of your strength, to be attractive with the youngest, the smartest, the most gifted from all over the world, whatever one's origin, whatever one's sexual orientation. I think that now we need a new Rome's dream, because we have to face the same issues that the Romans had to face, including the climate change, and the only country on earth that can fulfill Rome's dream is the United States of America.
Moving on from the sort of the politics of Rome, one thing that always fascinates me is you have Rome and the United States as well, and people in the United States, Mark Zuckerberg, et cetera, think that they are the carriers on of the legacy of Rome. But you have a city in central Italy called Rome that's filled with Romans such as yourself. What are the people who live in Rome and have lived in this city for thousands of years think about this thing that their city represents, this such much bigger idea?
It's a good question. I don't think Italians are so proud of their past, because we don't have a nationality conscience just like you. Every Italian is above all a citizen of his own town. Surely the Romans are so proud to be Romans, but not always they are so. They really know our history. I think there is a big difference between Roman civilizations and the others ancient civilization. Roman civilization is alive. If you go to Egypt, I love Egypt. If you go to pyramids, Caesar, for example, was very impressed by the pyramids. Caesar and Cleopatra made the first Nile cruise in history with a golden boat. They went upstream along the river. Crocodiles, hippos, temples, palms. beautiful. Cleopatra was really in love with Caesar and was always in a good mood, and Caesar appreciated that quality, but the cruise was interrupted by a bad news. A king, the king of Pontus, a region in Turkey, revolted against Rome, and Caesar went to fight him. He defeated him in 4 hours, and he wrote to the Senate, Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. 3 words, 12 letters, the first tweet in history. Caesar was not only a great writer, omnis Gallia divisa est in partes tres. The whole goal is divided into 3 parts. The beginning of the Bello Gallicus is amazing. He was not only a great political leader, he was not only a great military commander, he was also a great journalist. But the pyramids now are beautiful, but the pyramids are a dead monument to a dead civilization. Nobody in Egypt speaks the language of the pharaohs. Nobody has a name of the pharaohs. Nobody. There's no Ramsete now or Tutmosis in Egypt. In Italy, we have Roman names, and also you in America, you have Roman names. Pantheon is alive. Pantheon was the temple dedicated to all the gods, also to the Christian God. So the Christian didn't destroy it. In Pantheon, there is Raphael's tomb. There is Vittorio Emanuele II's tomb, the king who made Italy. And Raphael copied the Roman frescoes. And the Renaissance started by this idea that the Roman art was alive. And on the Raphael's tomb, there is, it's written in Latin, Hic est Raphael, here Raphael rests. The nature, rerum magna parens, the great mother of things. When Raphael was alive, feared to be one. And when Raphael died, the nature feared to die with him. Is it amazing or not?
Now, as we're recording on May 9th of 2025, the new Pope was elected, and he is the first American Pope elected to the Roman papacy. And to me, the Roman papacy, in a lot of ways, encompasses everything that the Roman Empire did, in that bringing in new people, that this person who was born in Chicago in America could be considered the Pope of Rome as any person. How do you think the papacy fits into this idea of the Roman Empire and the continuing Romanness?
But also the words of religion, also the language of religion comes from Latin. Faith is a Latin word. Religion is a Latin word. Pontiff is a Latin word. What does it mean, pontiff? Pons in Latin is bridge in English. The man who builds bridges. And in his first speech, Pope Leo said, we have to build bridges, not walls. Speaking about peace. Leo is a great name. In Italy, everybody remember Leo XIII, who was the Pope of Rerum Novarum, the Pope who tried first to reconcile Christianity and modern world. But I remember also Leo IV, the Pope who stopped the barbarians, not with the sword, but with the cross. We need peace now. I'm sure that the first American Pope will be a great Pope. He's North America. He was born in Chicago, but he had a mission in South America. He has Spanish, Italian, French roots, and maybe also African American roots. I read on your Times that the family of his mother has black blood in his body. It's great. It really, a North American Pope, and so is a son of the world, of the whole world. If great, he will be a great Pope. I am sure about that.
Yeah, I think that that's probably the most exciting and interesting part of it, is that as a person from North America, from the United States, he doesn't have a singular ethnicity, and that America is not an ethnicity, which Rome turned into a empire that wasn't defined by one singular ethnicity. But then all of the politics involved, it became under this Pope, it's going to be international. Is he a follower of Francis? Does he have his own ideas? Is he going to compromise with cardinals from this region or that region, or this bent or another bent? I think that's what's kind of fascinating about the papacy, especially the papacy today, as opposed to even the papacy of 100 years ago or 150 years ago, of some of the other Leos, Leo the 12th, the 13th, etc., who really were it was much more enclosed, their environment, than it is today.
Yes, surely. Listen, I think the Pope was Italian and after Vatican II, the Council, John 23, Paul 6, opened the church. Now the Pope is not a small political leader. The Pope is a universal spiritual leader. And there was a veto on an American Pope. The USA are too rich, is too rich, the rest of the world doesn't love the USA, an American, it's not possible that not American could become Pope. It was not true. There is no veto more. It's true that the USA and Germany are the two great economical powerful of Christianity. And Vatican needs money. This is one of the reasons, but not the only reason. Surely that reason, the richness, was a problem was an obstacle for a North American Pope. Now, no more veto, no more obstacles. We have an American Pope. We have a Pope who's a son of the world, who looks to the whole world, who wants peace in the Middle East, peace in Ukraine, peace in India and Pakistan. We have to support him. We have to pray for him and with him. And I'm sure that also people just like me, not everyone in Italy has the gift of faith, but everyone look to the new Pope with a great hope.
All right. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody enjoys. Let us know what you think in the comments, and take care.
The Historical Jesus Podcast is the sweeping saga of the life and times of Galilean Jesus of Nazareth, as well as the faith, religion, and church founded to honor and disseminate his acts and teachings. Join me, Mark Vinette, on this fascinating journey through time, exploring the many great works of Christian theology, literature, architecture, music, and art, inspired by the words and deeds of Jesus Christ.